The morgue was silent at 2:47 a.m. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting shadows across the cold metal tables. Dr. Sarah Chen had just finished her third autopsy of the night when she heard it. A voice, clear as day, coming from the refrigerated storage unit, whispering, "Please, someone help me." The voice belonged to Marcus Williams, the same Marcus Williams who had been declared dead 14 hours earlier. What happened next would shake the medical community to its core, challenge everything we know about death itself, and leave one question burning in everyone's mind. How do you come back from the dead when you were never really gone? Stay with me, because this story will change how you think about death forever. Tonight's story is titled, "He Was Declared Dead. Then His Voice Was Heard Again." But before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from, and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now, if you're wearing headphones, perfect. If not, you might want to put some on. Or, you can lower the volume now, just enough so my voice blends gently with the stillness of your room. Close your eyes. Let your shoulders sink just a bit more into your pillow. You don't have to do anything. Just listen. Let me take you back to where it all began. March 15, 2023. St. Mary's General Hospital, Chicago. Marcus Williams was 34 years old. A construction worker. Father of two. The kind of guy who'd give you the shirt off his back. But on this particular Tuesday morning, Marcus wasn't thinking about helping anyone. He was thinking about the sharp, crushing pain in his chest. His wife, Jennifer, found him collapsed in their kitchen at 6:23 a.m. Coffee still brewing. Morning news still playing. But Marcus was unconscious, his lips already turning blue. The 911 call came in at 6:24 a.m. 911, what's your emergency? My husband, he's not breathing. Oh God, he's not breathing. Paramedics arrived in 4 minutes. They found Marcus in full cardiac arrest. No pulse, no respiration. They immediately began CPR, shocking his heart twice on the way to the hospital. By 7:15 a.m., Marcus Williams was in the emergency room at St. Mary's, surrounded by a team of doctors fighting for his life. Dr. Robert Hayes, the attending physician, worked on Marcus for 4 to 7 minutes. Chest compressions, adrenaline shots, defibrillation. They tried everything. At 8:02 a.m., Dr. Hayes looked at the monitor. Flatline. He looked at his team. Exhausted faces. Defeat in their eyes. Time of death, Dr. Hayes announced, 8:02 a.m. Marcus Williams was dead. Or so they thought. The paperwork was filed. The death certificate was signed. Jennifer Williams was given the devastating news. The hospital's protocol was followed to the letter. Marcus's body was moved to the morgue at 11:30 a.m., where it would remain until the funeral home could collect it. Standard procedure. Everything by the book. But nothing about what happened next was standard. Dr. Sarah Chen had been working the night shift at St. Mary's morgue for 8 years. She'd seen everything. Heart attacks, accidents, overdoses. Death was her business, and she was good at it. But something felt different that Tuesday night. At 10:30 p.m., she was conducting a routine examination on an elderly patient when she heard a sound. Faint, almost like a whisper. She stopped, listened. Nothing. Just the ventilation system, she told herself. 30 minutes later, it happened again. This time, she was certain. Someone was speaking. But that was impossible. She was alone in the morgue with 4 bodies, all confirmed dead. She checked the hallway. Empty. Checked the adjacent rooms. Nothing. The sound seemed to be coming from the refrigerated storage units. Unit number 7. Marcus Williams. Dr. Chen approached the unit slowly. Her hands were shaking, something that never happened during her 8 years on the job. She pressed her ear against the cold metal door. Silence. She was about to walk away when she heard it again. Clearer this time. Cold, so cold. Dr. Chen stumbled backward, her heart hammering in her chest. She grabbed the unit's handle, hesitated for a moment, then yanked it open. Marcus Williams lay exactly as he had been placed 14 hours earlier. Pale, motionless, eyes closed, every indication of death present. But as Dr. Chen stared at the body, she could have sworn she saw the faintest rise and fall of his chest. He was breathing. She immediately called Dr. Hayes, who arrived within 15 minutes, convinced that the night shift stress had finally gotten to his colleague. But when Dr. Hayes examined Marcus himself, his skepticism turned to shock. Body temperature, 89 degrees Fahrenheit. Low, but not the 85 degrees expected after 14 hours of refrigeration. Skin color, pale, but with the slightest hint of pink around the fingernails. And then, the impossible. A pulse. Weak. Barely detectable. But there. This isn't possible, Dr. Hayes whispered, staring at Marcus's seemingly lifeless form. I check him myself. No pulse. No brain activity. No breathing. He was dead. But the monitors don't lie. And the monitors were showing signs of life. At 2:15 a.m., they moved Marcus back to the ICU. At 2:23 a.m., his eyes fluttered open. At 2:25 a.m., Marcus Williams spoke his first words. Where am I? The man who had been dead for 18 hours and 23 minutes was asking where he was. Word spreads fast in hospitals. By morning, everyone at St. Mary's knew about Marcus Williams, the man who came back from the dead. But the more they investigated, the more questions arose. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, the hospital's chief cardiologist, was brought in to examine Marcus. What she found defied medical explanation. His heart shows clear evidence of having stopped, she explained to the medical team. The enzyme levels, the cellular damage, everything indicates a massive cardiac event that should have been fatal. But his talking, his brain shows no signs of oxygen deprivation, no cognitive impairment. It's as if his body just paused. The tests were run and rerun. Blood work, brain scans, cardiac imaging. Every test confirmed the same impossible truth. Marcus Williams had died, remained dead for over 18 hours, and then somehow returned to life with no apparent damage. But that wasn't the strangest part. Marcus began describing things he shouldn't have been able to know. Dr. Chen, he said during his second day of recovery, you were wearing a blue sweater when you found me, and you were humming. Something classical. Dr. Chen went pale. She had been wearing a blue sweater. She had been humming Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata. But Marcus had been unconscious, dead. And Dr. Hayes, Marcus continued, you told the nurse that you were going to grab coffee from the machine on the 3rd floor before checking on me. The machine that's been broken for 2 weeks. Dr. Hayes stared at him. That conversation had happened while Marcus was in the morgue, in the refrigerated unit, dead. How could you possibly know that? Dr. Hayes asked. Marcus looked confused, as if the answer should be obvious. I could hear everything. I was there the whole time. I just couldn't move, couldn't open my eyes, couldn't speak, but I could hear every word. The implications were staggering. If Marcus could hear while dead, what did that mean about consciousness? About death itself? About what happens in those moments between life and whatever comes next? Dr. Rodriguez decided to investigate further. She interviewed Marcus for hours, documenting everything he remembered from his time in the morgue. He described conversations between staff members, phone calls made from the morgue office, even the radio station that Dr. Chen had been listening to at 3:47 a.m. Every detail checked out. But the most disturbing revelation came when Marcus described something else he had heard during his death. There were others, he said quietly, other voices. In the dark, they were calling out, trying to communicate. Some sounded scared, others seemed lost, and a few. Marcus paused, his eyes distant. A few sounded angry. What do you mean, others? Dr. Rodriguez asked. The other people in the morgue. They were trying to talk too, but no one could hear them except me. Dr. Rodriguez felt a chill run down her spine. During Marcus's time in the morgue, there had been 3 other bodies in refrigerated storage, all declared dead, all awaiting funeral arrangements, all potentially aware. Dr. Rodriguez couldn't let it go. The idea that consciousness might persist after clinical death was revolutionary and terrifying. She petitioned the hospital board for permission to conduct a formal study. The board was skeptical, but the case of Marcus Williams was too extraordinary to ignore. They approved a limited investigation with strict ethical guidelines. Dr. Rodriguez assembled a team, neurologists, cardiologists, psychiatrists, and even a physicist who specialized in consciousness studies. Their mission: determine if Marcus Williams was an anomaly or if something fundamental about death needed to be reconsidered. They started by interviewing every staff member who had been present during Marcus's death and resurrection. The stories were consistent. Marcus had been dead by every medical standard. No pulse, no breathing, no brain activity. The EKG had been flatlined. But then they discovered something that changed everything. Dr. James Morrison, a neurologist from Johns Hopkins, was reviewing Marcus's brain scans when he noticed an anomaly. In the deepest part of Marcus's brain, in an area called the brainstem, there was unusual activity that shouldn't exist in a living person, let alone someone who had been declared dead. "Look at this," Dr. Morrison said, pointing to the scan. "This neural pathway here, it's hyperactive, almost like it's been awakened." Awakened from what? Dr. Rodriguez asked. That's the question, isn't it? They decided to test Marcus's claims about hearing the other voices in the morgue. It was a long shot, but if Marcus could somehow perceive the consciousness of other deceased individuals, it would revolutionize everything we know about death. The test was simple in concept, ethically complex in execution. They would place a recording device near another recently deceased patient and see if Marcus could identify any communication attempts. The patient was Robert Chen, no relation to Dr. Sarah Chen, who had passed away from complications during surgery. He had been declared dead for 6 hours and was awaiting transfer to a funeral home. Marcus was brought to the morgue in a wheelchair, still recovering from his ordeal. As they approached Robert's storage unit, Marcus became agitated. His scared. Marcus said suddenly, "He keeps asking for his wife. He wants to tell her something about a safety deposit box." Dr. Rodriguez felt her heart racing. Robert Chen's wife hadn't been contacted yet. She was flying in from Seattle and wouldn't arrive until the next day. There was no way Marcus could have known about her. But the safety deposit box. They contacted Mrs. Chen immediately. After the initial shock of the call, she confirmed that Robert had mentioned something about a safety deposit box just before his surgery, but he hadn't had a chance to tell her the details. He said it was important. She told them over the phone, her voice breaking. "He said there were things I needed to know if something happened to him." Marcus nodded when they relayed this information. "He says the key is in his wallet. The box is at First National Bank on Maple Street. Box number 247. They checked Robert's personal effects. The key was exactly where Marcus said it would be. But as they continued the experiment, Marcus became increasingly distressed. His face went pale, and he began shaking. "What's wrong?" Dr. Rodriguez asked. "There are so many of them," Marcus whispered, his eyes darting around the empty morgue. "They're all trying to talk at once. Some have been here for days. Others just arrived. And they all have things they need to say. Some of them are angry," he continued, his voice barely audible. "They know they are dead, but they can't understand why no one can hear them. They are trapped, conscious but unable to communicate. And some of them don't want to leave." What Dr. Rodriguez and her team discovered over the next several weeks would challenge every assumption about death, consciousness, and what it means to be alive. Through Marcus, they were able to establish communication with 17 different individuals who had been declared dead but remained at the hospital. Each person had their own story, their own unfinished business, their own desperate need to communicate with the living world. Margaret Foster, 78, who had died from pneumonia, wanted her daughter to know where she had hidden her grandmother's wedding ring. David Kim, 45, who had suffered a stroke, needed to tell his business partner about a client meeting that would save their company. Lisa Rodriguez, yes, related to Dr. Rodriguez, her aunt, who had passed from cancer, wanted to apologize for harsh words spoken during their last conversation. One by one, Marcus helped relay these final messages. Family members were contacted. Last wishes were fulfilled. Secrets were revealed. Apologies were made. But the more Marcus communicated with the dead, the more it took a toll on him. "It's getting harder," Marcus told Dr. Rodriguez during one of their sessions. "The voices are getting louder, more insistent, and I'm starting to feel pulled." "Pulled how?" "Toward them. Like they want me to stay, to be their voice permanently." Dr. Rodriguez realized they were treading in dangerous territory. Marcus wasn't just a medical miracle. He was becoming a bridge between the world of the living and the dead. And that bridge was becoming unstable. The neurological scans showed the unusual brain activity was spreading. The hyperactive neural pathways were multiplying, taking over more of Marcus's normal brain function. "We need to stop the experiments," Dr. Morrison warned. "Marcus's brain is adapting to communicate with the deceased, but it's doing so at the expense of his connection to the living world." But it was too late. On March 30th, 15 days after his resurrection, Marcus Williams began to fade. Not dying, fading. His body remained healthy, but his consciousness was drifting between worlds. He would speak to people who weren't there, respond to conversations no one else could hear, and sometimes forget entirely where he was. "I can see them now," Marcus told his wife during one of his lucid moments. "Not just hear them. I can see the people in the morgue. They are standing right there, watching us, trying to get our attention." Jennifer Williams looked where her husband was pointing. She saw nothing but empty space. "Marcus, honey, there's no one there." "Yes, there is," Marcus insisted. "There's Margaret and David and Lisa and Robert. They're all here, and they're asking me to help them. They want me to cross over completely, to become their permanent voice. But if I do that..." Marcus looked at his wife with tears in his eyes. "If I do that, I can never come back." The medical team faced an impossible decision. Marcus Williams existed in a state between life and death, serving as a conduit for those who had passed but remained conscious. But maintaining this connection was slowly pulling him away from the living world. Dr. Rodriguez consulted with experts around the globe: neurologists, theologians, philosophers, and physicists. Everyone had theories, but no one had answers. "What we're seeing challenges our fundamental understanding of consciousness," explained Dr. Sarah Hoffman, a consciousness researcher from Oxford. "If awareness can persist after clinical death, then death isn't the binary state we've always believed it to be." But the question remained: should they try to sever Marcus's connection to the dead, potentially saving his life but silencing the voices of those trying to communicate? Or should they allow him to continue, knowing it might cost him his own existence? The decision ultimately came down to Marcus himself. On April 2nd, Marcus gathered his wife and children around his hospital bed. His condition had stabilized somewhat, but everyone knew he was living on borrowed time. "I need to tell you what it's like," Marcus said, his voice weak but clear. "Being dead, I mean. It's not like going to sleep. You're still you. You can think, you can feel, you can remember everything. But you can't move, can't speak, can't let anyone know you're still there." "Is it scary?" his 8-year-old daughter asked. Marcus considered this. At first, yes, very scary. But then you realize that love doesn't die. The love I have for you, for your mother, for your brother, that's still there. It's actually stronger, because it's all that's left of who you really are. "But Daddy," his 10-year-old son interrupted, "if you love us, why do you want to go back there?" Marcus smiled sadly. "Because there are people there who are scared and alone. They have messages for their families, things they need to say. And right now, I'm the only one who can help them. But helping them means I might not be able to stay with you." Jennifer Williams had been listening silently, but now she spoke up. "Marcus, we need you here. The kids need their father. I need my husband." "I know," Marcus replied, taking her hand, "and I want to stay more than anything. But I keep thinking about all those voices, all those people trying to reach their loved ones. What if one of them was you, Jennifer? What if you were trying to tell me something important, and I couldn't hear you?" The room fell silent as the weight of Marcus's words settled over them. Finally, Jennifer spoke. "What do you want to do?" Marcus closed his eyes for a long moment. When he opened them, his decision was clear. "I want to help them. All of them. But I want to find a way to do it without losing my connection to you." Dr. Rodriguez, who had been observing from the corner of the room, stepped forward. "Marcus, what if I told you there might be another way?" Marcus looked at her with hope in his eyes. "What do you mean?" "We've been thinking about this all wrong. Instead of trying to cut your connection to the dead or enhance it, what if we could control it? Turn it on and off like a radio?" The idea was revolutionary. Using targeted electromagnetic stimulation, they might be able to help Marcus control when he could communicate with the deceased. He could serve as their voice when needed, but maintain his life with his family. It was experimental, risky. No one knew if it would work, but it was hope. The procedure took place on April 8, 2023. Dr. Rodriguez and her team had worked around the clock to develop a device that could regulate the unusual neural activity in Marcus's brain. The device was small, about the size of a hearing aid, and would be implanted behind Marcus's ear. Using precise electromagnetic pulses, it could either amplify or suppress the hyperactive neural pathways that allowed him to communicate with the dead. In theory, Marcus could activate the device when he chose to serve as a bridge between worlds, then deactivate it to return to normal life. In theory, are you ready? Dr. Rodriguez asked as Marcus was prepped for surgery. Marcus nodded, squeezing Jennifer's hand. If this works, I can help them and still come home to you. And if it doesn't work? Jennifer asked quietly. Then at least we tried. The surgery took 4 hours. Dr. Morrison performed the delicate procedure to implant the device while Dr. Rodriguez monitored Marcus's brain activity in real time. At 3:47 p.m., the device was activated for the first time. The change was immediate and dramatic. Marcus's brain activity, which had been chaotic and overwhelming for weeks, suddenly organized itself into clear, distinct patterns. The voices of the dead, which had been a constant cacophony in his mind, faded to silence. How do you feel? Dr. Rodriguez asked. Marcus blinked, looked around the room, and smiled, the first genuine smile he'd managed in weeks. Quiet, he said. For the first time since I came back, it's quiet in my head. The real test came 2 hours later. With the device deactivated, Marcus would attempt to communicate with the deceased individuals in the morgue. If it worked, he would relay their messages. If it didn't, well, they'd be back to square one. Marcus pressed the small button behind his ear. The device deactivated with a barely audible click. Immediately, his expression changed. They're back, he whispered. Margaret is here. She says her daughter found the ring, and she's grateful. David says the business meeting went well. His partner got the contract. Marcus paused, listening to voices only he could hear. And there's someone new. An older man. Says his name is Frank. He passed yesterday from a heart attack. He needs his son to know that he's proud of him, and the will is in the safe behind the picture of his mother. They contacted Frank Morrison's son, the same Dr. Morrison who had performed Marcus's surgery. Dr. Morrison went pale when he heard the message. My father did have a safe, he confirmed. I've been looking for his will everywhere, and the picture of my grandmother, it's been hanging in his study for 30 years. They found the will exactly where Marcus said it would be. The device worked perfectly. Marcus could turn his connection to the deceased on and off at will. When activated, he could communicate with those who had passed but remained conscious. When deactivated, he could live a normal life with his family. Over the following months, Marcus helped dozens of families receive final messages from their loved ones. He became known as the Bridge, a living connection between the world of the living and the realm of the dead. But Marcus's story raised profound questions about the nature of death itself. If consciousness could persist after clinical death, what did that mean for how we treat the deceased? For funeral practices? For our understanding of what happens when we die? Dr. Rodriguez published her findings in the New England Journal of Medicine. The paper, titled Persistent Consciousness After Clinical Death, a Case Study, became the most downloaded medical paper in history. Marcus Williams had done more than come back from the dead. He had opened a door between worlds and changed our understanding of life, death, and everything in between. 2 years have passed since Marcus Williams first died and came back to life. His story has been studied by researchers around the world, but many questions remain unanswered. How common is persistent consciousness after death? Marcus's case suggests it might be more prevalent than we ever imagined. Dr. Rodriguez has identified 12 other potential cases worldwide where individuals may have experienced awareness after clinical death. Why can Marcus communicate with the dead when others cannot? The unique neural pathways in his brain seem to be the key, but what caused them to develop remains a mystery. And perhaps most importantly, what does this mean for the millions of people who die each year? Are they all experiencing consciousness after death, trapped and unable to communicate, Marcus continues to serve as a bridge between worlds, helping families receive final messages from their deceased loved ones. But he's also become something else, a living reminder that death might not be the end we've always believed it to be. "I don't think I'm special," Marcus told me during a recent interview. "I think I just happened to come back when most people don't. But they're all still there, still aware, still trying to communicate. What do they want people to know?" I asked. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. That love survives death. That consciousness continues. And that saying goodbye doesn't mean the end of connection. The implications of Marcus's case extend far beyond medicine. Religious leaders debate what it means for concepts of the afterlife. Philosophers question the nature of consciousness itself. Scientists race to develop technology that might allow others to communicate with the deceased. But for Marcus, the most important aspect of his experience isn't the scientific breakthrough or the media attention. "Every night, I go home to my wife and kids," he says. "I help with homework, we eat dinner together, we watch TV. I get to be a husband and father because I was given a second chance. And when someone needs me to deliver a message from a loved one who has passed, I can do that too. I can help families find closure, receive final words of love, or learn important information. I exist between two worlds, but I'm fully present in both." Marcus Williams' story challenges everything we thought we knew about death. It suggests that consciousness might persist after our bodies fail, that love transcends physical existence, and that the boundary between life and death might be more fluid than we ever imagined. Hospitals around the world are now reconsidering their protocols for the deceased. Morgues are installing monitoring equipment. Researchers are developing new technologies to detect signs of persistent consciousness. The field of thanatology, the study of death, has been revolutionized by a single case of a man who came back to tell us what lies beyond. But perhaps the most unsettling aspect of Marcus's story isn't what is told us about death. It's what is suggested about all the voices we haven't been able to hear. Tonight, when you go to sleep, remember Marcus Williams. Remember that death might not be the silence we've always believed it to be. And if you ever find yourself in a quiet hospital, in the middle of the night, listen carefully. You might just hear someone trying to tell you something important. Someone who was declared dead, but whose voice can still be heard.